finally, we're on the final part of our demo, step 4, where we're going to add the CRUD operations, right? Remember, we just got our filtering for the doctors in place, but right now if I click a patient, okay, ooh, nice little animation, but nothing really happens. So we want to be able to select a patient, maybe edit them, maybe delete them, right? Obviously, we need to be able to add new patient records as well. So I'm going to stop running, and we're going to, first of all, I'm going to take the same approach we did in our earlier example. Even though we're using the model view model design pattern, I'm going to create a separate page for actually working with the patient details. And on that page, we'll look after editing, deleting, or even adding or inserting a new one as well, right? There's other ways you could arrange this, but I'm going to stick with that familiar approach. So when I add this new content page, first of all, I'll make sure I do it in the views folder, right? And we'll make sure of the type of page we're adding. Got to be very careful. So I'm going to right-click the views folder, add a new item. I'm going to show all templates. Just that way I know for sure exactly what it is I'm doing here, right? I want to make sure I select .NET MAUI. And it's a content page using XAML, right? Remember we talked about this before. You can do it, without any XAML, do everything in C#, but the XAML is quite a shortcut for us in terms of the actual coding that we have to do. So I'm going to call it patient detail page and just click add. Okay, so there's our basic page. We'll of course be making some changes to it in a few moments, but to work along with it, obviously we need a view model to work along with the view. So I'll right click view models, we'll add a class here, and the class will be called the same name, patient details view model. Okay, now immediate changes to make. I want it public and a partial. Has to be a partial class to work with our community toolkit, and I'm going to inherit from base view model. Thank you, IntelliSense, right? Obviously, the base view model as well, we get along with that, we get all the goodies of a, oh, now my mind's going blank. Observable object. How could I forget that? Ah, silly me. Okay, so there is our new patient detail view model. Now, as we know from experience, we've got to do some work to make sure that this view model works along with the actual view, that they're paired together, so to speak. To get ready for that, though, we want to also add it to dependency injection, so we'll come down to MAUI program, and I'm going to add, right, this is where we've been adding all these different services to our dependency injection system. I'm just going to rearrange this a little bit, put that up sort of on its own. That's the one for the HTTP client. Notice that for the main page, we did it with a singleton. We're going to take a slightly different approach here. We'll only ever need one main page, right? It's just like we'll only need one of our repositories on each of them. But I'm going to do an add transient here instead of singleton, because we might possibly, because the navigation system we're using, shell navigation, we could create a detail page, we might delete it, we might make another one, etc. So we'll add it as a transient, right? Okay, so that's good. So we have that in our dependency injection system. I'm just going to save everything so far. Now let's come back to the code behind for the patient detail page, right? The next steps are going to be linking up the view and the view model itself. So now it's available in dependency injection. We can just inject it into, right, the view itself, and then that allows us to come down here and set it as the binding context. So the view model becomes the binding context of the actual view. Now we know, along with that, we have to do some work in the XAML itself, because it is actually just a partial view, right? So in here, there's a few usings actually that we want to add some namespaces, basically, right? So I might as well get all the ones that I know I'm going to need in place, okay? Maybe I'll make some space here, right? So we have our namespace for our MAUI Community Toolkit, MCT, the models namespace, and our view models namespace, right? But also, to finish setting up the association between the two, we'll specify here that the data type is our patient details view model, right? So we made a strongly typed view essentially here. Okay, and before I forget, easy to forget these little details, the title, okay, I don't want it to be this file name, patient detail page. I'm going to bind it so I can change it in code whenever I want to. I can, extra letter there, right? Set it to the title observable property, right, that I'm going to set as we bring this page up. Okay, all right. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to use shell navigation, so I have to come down here to app shell and the code behind for it, and we're going to register the route so that we can actually use it to navigate to our patient detail page. Okay, now, of course, it's going to underline in red until we get the namespace in place. There we go. And that'll facilitate our navigation system that we're going to use. Oh, boy, that's a lot of work, but we're ready to start actually using our new page that we've added. So let's go back to our main view model for a moment. Main view model. Okay. Now, we have our various observable properties. I've kind of been grouping them more or less together here, right? I'm going to add a selected patient, because right now we have our list, but we don't really do anything. We can try to select a patient, but it doesn't really actually happen, right? So we're going to add an observable property for the selected patient, a patient object, right, that we're going to actually be able to select. Now we're going to also make sure that it's set to null when the page appears, because if we navigate away and come back, right, we don't want it to be highlighted as being currently selected. So we'll do that in the appearing in a moment, right? But we also want to add a flag that we need to refresh the patient list, right? There's no point, I mean, we could just do it every time, but if we've gone off to the details page and we just cancel, or for some reason we don't actually make any changes to any data, then when we navigate back to the main page, why bother going out to the database and refreshing everything, right? So we're going to add an observable property here for need patient refresh. And that'll be something we basically communicate back and forth as we navigate to the details page and back again. All right, so now coming down to the appearing, we're going to modify this a little bit too, because we want an else if, right, for needing patient refresh. So I don't mess up, I'm just going to copy and paste this bit of code here, right? The first part stays the same, but instead of just this simple else, we'll have an else if we need to refresh the patient list, right? Need patient refresh. Okay, and if we do, right, because maybe we deleted or edited the patient, then we'll set the index back to 0 and call show patients with null so that it actually takes care of filtering for all the list, right? Else, we'll just set it back to the top, and away we go. Then, we want to make sure we clear any selected patient out of the list by just setting selected patient to null. And that way we don't have the visual clue of something being selected on the list itself. Now, to communicate information back and forth between these two views using shell navigation, one of the things we can take advantage of are query properties, right? So we're going to add a query property here, so when we come back, again, back to the main view model, or the main page, from the details page, right, we can pass need patient refresh, right? So that will be our refresh here. Okay, that will be the parameter that we pass. All right, that's how we get the communication going in this direction, coming from the patient details page. But of course, we're going to pass a lot of information to the patient details page when we navigate to it. Okay. All right, now, we need to add an event handler here for when we select a patient, when the selected patient is changed as well. So I'm going to put that down here right beside the other event handler we've essentially added logically speaking. Right, so this handles the event of selecting a patient in the list view, okay? So if the value is null, right, then we just return well, there's nothing to work with, right? We haven't actually selected a patient. If we have selected one, right, then obviously the intention is that we're going to edit or possibly delete this selected patient, right? So we're going to take the approach of sending all the data that the details page needs, right? We're going to send it all as we go and navigate to the page. So I'm going to prepare basically a dictionary, a string object dictionary with the following values. I'm going to send the entire doctors collection, okay, that list of doctors. I'm going to send the selected patient. Well, that will come in here as value, right? So I'll just pass that as patient. And then editing, I'm going to send the value true, right? Because we're going to the patient details page basically in edit mode, right? As opposed to add mode or insert mode, okay? So all of this data we're going to bundle up. We'll use our shell navigation going to our patient details page. Oh, I have to add quickly the using for the namespace for views, right? And then we'll pass all the data as we go. All right. Now, what about if we want to insert or add a new patient, right? Well, let's create a relay command for that that we'll actually call from a button on the view itself, right? It will be our add button, and when we click it, okay, we'll call this command. We'll new up a brand new patient object, right? Because we're going to take the same approach. We're going to pass a patient object to the patient details page, but it's going to be a new one, okay? I'm just setting the minimum properties that I feel like doing. I want to set a date of birth. I'm going to say I was born yesterday and expect yearly visits. I have to have some legitimate value, so I might as well start off with the assumption of the most common one twice per year, right? Then again, we prepare the same structure of data, a dictionary with all the doctors, our new patient, not on a selected one, our new patient we just created, and editing will be false because we're going to be in add or insert mode if you prefer to call it that, right? Same command to shelf, we navigate to the details page and pass all that data. Okay, now we'll have to actually do a little bit of work then back on the main page itself, our view, right? Because right now our list is set up, look at that, selection mode is none, right? So we aren't actually selecting anything yet. So we're going to change that to single. We aren't worried about selecting ranges. We just want to pick one patient at a time. But we're going to also select the selected item. And bind it to our selected patient. Oh, sorry. Put in the wrong spot there. Put in the picker. Want it down here. Our selected item in our list view, okay, is bound to our selected patient. Okay, and we're going to need a button. I'm going to add it up here to our toolbar, right? And it's going to be our add button. So I'm just going to replace the toolbar with all my code so I don't mess it up. Also added some tooltip properties, which are useful in some platforms. Okay, so the add button, okay, the command, we're binding to our add command. And by the way, remember I mentioned before, if you look under resources and images, I went and just grabbed these few different helpful little images. You have copies of them as well. And away we go, right? There's our refresh circle and so on. Okay, all right. So now we have to get back to the details page. We're all set now to use the details page, pass the information we need, but we haven't done much work yet other than associating the view model with the view on the patient detail page itself. Okay, so let's come back to the patient detail view. Okay. Now we've already added all this code up top. That's good. Just want to make sure of that. But we want to add a behavior as well, right? Because when the page first appears, we want something to happen. We can't use the built-in appearing event if we're going to stick truly to the model view model. But fortunately, thanks to our Maui Community Toolkit, we can associate with a behavior, right, the built-in event and bind it to our appearing command, right? The event name is appearing. Our command in the view model is the appearing command, and this event to behavior, event to command behavior allows us to do that association. All right, now I'm just going to, because I'll otherwise mess it up, and it's really not new code. This is the same kind of code we've done before. I'm just going to replace all the entries and inputs and so on in our vertical stack layout here. Notice I threw it in a scroll view as well to make sure we could scroll. And here's all of our entries and so on for first name, middle name, last name, all the required properties we need to be able to set for a patient, whether it's a new one or an existing one. That's why all the bindings are in place, right? And then for the foreign key, our doctor, we have our drop-down list here, our picker, right? The item source is our collection of doctors. The selected item is the selected doctor, displaying the formal name, and the index is the selected doctor index, observable property in our view model. Okay, I think that's all we have to do there. We have our buttons for save, cancel, and delete at the bottom as well. And notice that the commands are bound to command, relay commands in the view model. Okay. Now, remember we set up that whole data structure to pass all that information, so we need to actually be able to receive it, and that we do in the actual view model itself. So coming back to the patient view model, I'm going to add those query properties for each of those pieces of information. Our collection of doctors, our patient, and whether or not we're in edit mode, right? Okay. Now, notice some underlining going on. I know from experience, I might as well right away save some time. Let's go back to the main view model. Go right to the top here. And here are all these usings, okay, for our inputs, our data, our models, utilities, etc. Well, you know what? I'm going to basically be using them all. So let me save some time and just copy all those into the top here. And that should, okay, get rid of all my red underlines after a moment or two as well. Oh, maybe this one, let me just check. Oh, it's because I haven't made that yet. Okay, that's okay. We're getting there shortly. All right. So inside here, I only need the patient repository. I don't need doctors because I'm passing the entire list of doctors over as I come. So in my constructor, I'll just from dependency injection, right, insert my patient repository. And I'll set my title. I'll just go assume add new patient for now. We're actually going to set it in code depending on in the appearing anyway. But I'm just putting something in there. I could put Dave likes fish on Fridays if I wanted to or whatever, right? Doesn't matter. Let's add the relay command then for that behavior we added for appearing, okay? So if we're editing, okay, I'm just going to set the title to patient details. Otherwise, it'll be our add new patient, right? And then we have our selected doctor index. Okay, we're setting appropriately depending if we have a patient to bind to, then we'll bind it to the actual foreign key information we're getting from the patient itself. All right, now it's going to complain until we get our other observable properties in place, so I might as well add some of those next. So obviously I need my list of doctors, which interestingly isn't coming all the way from the web API, but just from the main page being passed in that query, right? And then our patient and whether or not we're editing. So there, that should help with some of the things, but we also need our selected doctor and selected doctor index observable properties. So I'll put those next. There, now I'm getting rid of some of my red underline. All right. Well, that's most of the work except for the actual commands, okay, relay commands for are basically save, delete, and cancel, right? So save works the same pretty much as we've seen with this approach before, whether we're adding or editing, right? You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to grab all three, and we'll get them all in place in our code together. And we'll just kind of walk through it again. Okay, so in terms of save, okay, if it's a new record, right, the patient.doctor will be null, okay? So we're going to try to get the selected doctor, and away we go. that should work, right? So we're assigning it to the foreign key object, the doctor object contained inside the patient class, right? Now, if nothing's selected, we still want something there, so we're going to at least set the doctor ID, right? And there we go. All right, that would happen if we were adding, okay? We won't actually have a doctor object. We will not necessarily, right? We'll at least, though, have the doctor ID, the foreign key integer. Then we can check, okay, if we actually have a value. If not, I'm going to show a display alert, doctor not selected. You must select the primary care physician, right? We're going to do that right in code here rather than waiting for the database to yell at us. Why wait till we've actually used the web API to send this up? Because we know we have to select a doctor. Okay. The next decision structure here, are we inserting or updating, right? The patient ID, the primary key for the patient, will of course be 0 if we're just newing up a new patient, right? Adding a new patient. Okay, so we know we call add patient when we pass the patient object. Otherwise, we call update patient because it already has been saved to the database. Okay, the ID has been generated by the system, okay, integer identity, remember, for the patient ID. In either case, whether we added or updated a patient, now we just use our shell navigation to go ... Okay, basically we'll back up a level and pass refresh equals true, right? And that's telling the main page, yep, we've made a change. We either did an add or an update, so we need to refresh the data. Okay. Our catch blocks are our standard approaches with our API exceptions, etc., right? Now, delete. We're going to use a display alert, confirm delete, are you certain you want to, etc., right? Yes, no, if the answer is true, okay, then we actually call delete patient, and then shell go back, okay, setting refresh to true, because we need to refresh the list, we've deleted a patient. Finally, the easiest one of all is our cancel. Don't have to do anything, we just go back to the main page, but we set refresh equal to false, because we didn't change any data, there's no need to actually refresh the screen. And believe it or not, we're finally there, okay? That's all the changes we need to make. So let's just do a quick run and make sure we're actually getting the performance that we are hoping to see. Okay, almost there. And good. All right, so we're loading data. We can select a doctor, we can still filter, get our filtered list of patients, right? But now I can click a patient like Barney Rubble and navigate to my patient details page, right? Where I could make an editing change. I could add here Barney, I can't think of a name, David. Barney David Rubble, right? Oh, I even spelled it with an incorrect case, but that's okay. Barney D. Rubble, there you go. So we see we actually made an editing change. Let me fix that. And while I'm here, let me just copy that. Save. Let's edit Fred. I'm going to give Fred okay. Oh, I must have lost. Oh, it was right there. There we go. I'll give Fred Barney's OHIP number just to make sure. Yes, there we go. Unable to save duplicate OHIP number. Excellent, right? And of course, you know, if we do lots of things that should cause errors, right? Oh, actually, I don't want to have that duplicate OHIP. Well, see, this will get all those ones. It doesn't, of course, check for the duplicate until we actually send it to the database. So this is a list of all the last name can't be blank, first name can't be blank, all those other annotations, right? Okay, I'll just cancel. Okay, let's just try a quick insert. So we'll add. Hopefully that's unique. Date of birth. Oh, I wasn't born yesterday. I was born more than a week ago. There you go. All right. 2 is fine. I have to, oh, let me show you. Let me cancel. If I do my save now, This is my own code, making sure that I've selected a primary care physician, because that is required. I have to pick a doctor. I'm going to go with Charles Xavier and save, and there we go. All right, so there I am. I can come down, I can edit this record. Nope, I'm going to change the doctor. Good. Now, let's actually do a delete. I'll delete that record. Are you sure? Yes. And there we go. So now I'm gone out of the list. So that's good. We successfully have inserted, updated, deleted. Everything seems to be working exactly as we would want. Thank you.